So, some people may know this, but presidential candidate Eric Swalwell dropped out of the race recently. He was one of the ones who was polling at about 0%. Maybe I might give him 1%. But he was kind of authoritarian, reeking of that authoritarianism. Very he would hammer away on Russia, very much an MSNBC type of fall in line kind of guy who would not get anything done in office. So that's no loss. But to fill that aching void, a billionaire named Tom Steyer has sprouted up and said that he's running in the Democratic lane for president in this term. And Tom Steyer, it's pretty ironic that you would come out and do this now and say all these things about, the things that he says in his ads they're not wrong. He's against money in politics. That's one of the things that he's hammering on and everything like that, issues around corporate power. It's ironic how Tom Steyer only has the ability to come out and do this because of his money. Because that's the culture we live in. The capitalist culture we live in. If Tom Steyer had the amount of money that I have, which is chump change, especially to him, he would not be able to come out and just be like, yeah, let me just shoot this really HD, nice looking sounding advertisement from a barn that doesn't even look dirty and say blah 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 and make it sound like I'm fighting for the people, and boom, I'm in the race. Unless you have billions of dollars in this country, you can't do that. You don't have that social sway on the culture. You don't have that ability. And I think that is really part of the problem that he professes to be so aggrieved by, of this corporate power. So it's just all around irony. It's just all around cruel irony that this guy's running for president. And he seems nice, He seems nice. He seems like a nice, this is literally what he is. He's a nice rich guy who's noticing that all his rich friends are fucking up the planet. So he is like, oh, let me do something about it. But here's the question. Why does it have to be you, Tom Steyer? Why? Ask yourself that question. Why does it have to be you? Why couldn't you have just shot this video and said, I'm endorsing Bernie Sanders 2020? Because that's literally what you should have done. That's literally what you should have done. But, this rich man's arrogance is just reeking all over this guy. In the sense of he is putting himself forward as I can do it. I'm the only one who can do it. Whereas, people will say all these things about all politicians and powerful types and people who run for office. It's oh, well, excuse me. Well, it's all just strategy to get them into power. People think there's this idea that falls into this ideology that I like to call massism, which is just a blind, aimless, faceless, nameless, people versus the state dichotomy of things, which is actually just a perversion of the dialectical materialism. But, I digress. That is for another video. This idea of I lost track of where I was, but my point is, Bernie Sanders isn't a movement. Bernie Sanders is not like those power-hungry politicians. Bernie Sanders cares about the issues and puts them literally ahead of himself. If you watch a Bernie Sanders campaign ad, there's one that focuses on this single mom who's raised, or not even a mom of the kid that she's raising. She's the grandmother. And the child, she says, is partially autistic. And she works at McDonald's making like $8.25 an hour or something around those ranges. And she can't support herself, barely. She can barely pay the bills in her little apartment that she buys. And the partially autistic grandson has to sleep in the living room. And that's more than half the ad just centers around her. And then you see Bernie surrounded by his supporters with a megaphone in his hand, literally still, after all these years, protesting against the tyrannical corporations. So that's the thing that the massists will say, is like, all these politicians are the same. Never trust a politician or anyone running for office as far as you can throw them. And all of that just goes into this faulty thinking about representative democracy of like, we shouldn't vote. The only way to improve the material conditions of the people in the country that you seem to be fighting for against the state so vehemently is to vote for the right candidates, so that we're not being ruled by proto-fascists and neoliberals anymore. So there. Tom Steyer's candidacy is baked in irony, and he really doesn't have a shot. He really doesn't have a chance. But I just wanted to make this video telling you that he talks a big game. He's one of those candidates that you might think is a real progressive, but look deeper, because what it really is behind that face is a rich man's arrogance and a vanity project, really, in a way that I don't think that he himself is aware of, but it really is. Like, he just needs to ask himself why he thinks he's the savior of the day, and what he actually believes in. But that's just my 2 cents. Social Revolution now, Social Revolution 2019. Email me at socialrevolution2019@gmail.com, and we can talk, and I will see you guys in the next video. Don't vote Tom Steyer. Bernie 2020. Thank you.